So in this lecture, we are going to begin to explore a new topic, which is portfolio optimization and modern portfolio theory. At this point, I think we've spent quite a bit of time getting comfortable with one particular fact, and that is stock returns are random. It's similar to how a coin toss is random. We don't ask, what is the result of the next 10 coin tosses going to be? We know intuitively that this is a silly question. A better question to ask is, how are coin tosses distributed? And are some coins correlated with other coins? And can we exploit these relationships in order to optimally allocate our resources? That's what this section is all about. This particular lecture will discuss the concept of risk. In finance, there are several ways to conceptualize risk, but in this course, we will be focused on one, which is the standard deviation. Now at this point, we all know what standard deviation is, so there's no need to define it again. We've seen it many times in this course already. It's the sigma that we see in the normal distribution, although of course, most distributions have a standard deviation. The question for this lecture will be, why is this an appropriate measure of risk? Previously, we looked at how you might try to predict stock returns. You might think of your prediction as the expected value of the stock return at some point in the future. At this point, we know that those predictions will be wrong to some degree. The question isn't will you be wrong, because we know that we are guaranteed to be wrong. The question is how wrong. Suppose that I predict my expected return will be 10%, but let's say the realized return is 9%. In this case, that's not so bad. But what if I predict my expected return will be 10% and the realized return is minus 20%? Now that is very bad. As you know, the standard deviation characterizes how far away the samples of a random variable can deviate from its mean. And so you can see there's a direct relationship between that statistical concept and this financial concept of how bad your prediction of the return will be. Let's do some simple exercises to test your intuition about risk. Consider this scenario where you have a choice between two stocks, stock A and stock B. We can see that they both have the same volatility, but the return for stock A is higher than the return for stock B. As an easy quiz question, I want you to think about which stock you would prefer to invest in, A or B. I'll give you a minute to think about it, so please pause the video and come back when you are ready. Okay, so hopefully you chose stock A. Stock A has a higher return, and therefore, if you invest in this stock, you will make a larger profit. Let's now consider a different scenario. This time, stock A and stock B have the same return, but different volatilities. Again, I want you to take a minute to think about which of these you would prefer, given the choice. Please take a moment or pause the video until you're ready. Okay, so hopefully you chose stock B. Stock B has a lower volatility, but the same return. In this scenario, we prefer stock B because there is less opportunity to lose money. Remember that, in reality, you don't know when these wild swings in price are going to happen because they are in the future. So avoiding high volatility is generally desirable. Now let's consider a third scenario. In this case, stock A has a higher return, but it also has higher volatility. Still, you have to make a choice between either A or B. So which one do you choose? Again, please take a moment to think about this and pause the video until you think you have the answer. Alright, so in this case, there isn't enough information to answer this question. And unfortunately, scenarios like this are exactly the kind of scenarios we encounter in the real world. As you've seen previously, it's generally the case that higher return also means higher risk. Sometimes it may come down to a personal decision. Maybe you just don't like taking on risk. It could be due to what stage you are in your life. It's generally advised that younger people invest in riskier funds because if anything bad happens in the market, they can afford to wait for it to recover. However, there are many different funds to choose from, each with varying levels of performance and associated risk. Some funds, which are often called target retirement funds, are automatically allocated based on the date that you plan to retire. They generally follow the rule that, in the early years, more volatility is acceptable in exchange for higher rewards, and in the later years, they avoid risk at the cost of also having lower expected returns. Okay, so to summarize this lecture, why do we want to avoid risk? Well, let's just compare two time series of stock prices. With one stock price, it's just a constant linear trend upward. We can buy at any time and sell at any time, and we are making a constant amount of profit per unit of time we invested in that asset. But now, let's take Starbucks stock price. There is lots of variability, hence lots of risk. Now you might look at this and think, well, there's a strong trend upward. Surely I would have made money. But remember, you are not that smart. You didn't predict that you should buy Starbucks stock on this day and sell on this day. Rather, it's much more likely that you would let your emotions guide your decision making. Imagine if you buy on this day. Why? Because you see Starbucks stock going up very quickly. You think, wow, this is a great investment. We've all been there. Then you see Starbucks stock drop rapidly. You think, oh no, I better cut my losses. So you sell. And then the stock goes back up, so you made completely the wrong decision. Remember, you can't predict the future, because if you could, you wouldn't be taking this course in the first place. So recognize that, although there is a general trend upward, there are still many opportunities to lose money with a risky asset.